Thanks for joining us. Just recently, my wife and I were sitting down and having an evening together, and we happened to come across a movie that we began to watch. And as we started watching it, we got very, very much engrossed in it. It was a very heartwarming movie, ultimately, in the end of it. But the movie was built around the story of a young man and a young woman who fell in love, ended up getting married. And after they were married, she was pregnant. And they found out in the midst of early on in the pregnancy that doctors told them that the baby would be born with a number of abnormalities and would be probably very unlikely that the child would live very long, maybe 6 months, maybe a year. They could never tell. A lot of the organs within the child wouldn't develop as completely as they should, would never be able to walk, would probably never be able to talk. And the husband in the movie was completely, wanting the wife to get an abortion, and the wife was of the other opinion. No, we're going to follow through with this. This is our child, and when this child comes into the world, we're going to love this child, and whatever time we have with the child, we're going to, deem it as precious. Well, the husband leaves, divorces his wife, and she has the child. And the child is born with all of those deformities and abnormalities. But as we were watching the movie, as the child went past 1 month, 6 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years, of course, it was very taxing on the mom. She had to give a great deal of her attention to this little girl. And the child couldn't do much of anything at all for herself. She couldn't communicate from the standpoint verbally, and there was just a lot of things wrong with her. But I remember at some point in the movie, the mother sitting upon a porch swing, overlooking her yard out over a mountainous area, and taking that little child and cradling that child in her arms, and leaning over and kissing that child as tears were running down her eyes, and holding that child close to her and embracing her, and letting her know how very, very, very much she loved that little girl. And as I sat there and watched that, of course, tears welled up in my eyes, and I immediately got a picture of God coming to humanity in our brokenness and our deformity, and holding humanity close to his heart and kissing us in our brokenness, and communicating to us how very, very much he loved us. I don't know about you, but the Bible also declares that the whole world has been deformed by sin. I mean, sin has stained and deformed every one of us in this world, all of humanity. And God came and he took upon himself the form of a servant. And while Jesus walked in this world, he was willing to touch people who nobody else wanted to touch. He was willing to talk to people and spend time with people that nobody else wanted to spend time with. He was willing to embrace people that nobody else would embrace, whether it was a leper or a prostitute or an outcast from the temple, a thief. It didn't matter. He was willing to take people with their brokenness and their deformity and hold them in his arms and kiss them, with tears streaming down his cheeks at the condition that we found ourselves in. In my life, and I know in your life, I'm sure there are a lot of areas of brokenness and pain where you have made mistakes, you've fallen flat on your face. There are still warped areas in me, as I'm sure that there are in you, wounds that have been inflicted upon us that have deformed us and have affected the way we live our lives, sometimes in a very dysfunctional way. And yet, in the midst of all of the mess-ups, the screw-ups, places of brokenness, God has taken me and he holds me in his arms. And when he looks at me, he doesn't see deformity, he doesn't see brokenness. He sees his child that he gave his life for, that he reconciled to himself, that he loves with a love beyond my comprehension. And he reaches down moment by moment, day by day, and kisses me in my brokenness. And you know what that kiss does? Do you know what that embrace does? That embrace has a healing effect. It has a restorative effect. It brings comfort and security and safety and assurance to know that even where I'm at, I am loved beyond belief. You are too. And whatever broken place you find yourself in today, God is not holding you at an arm's length. God has not rejected you. God has not turned his back on you. But he has reached out. He is cradling you in his arms. And he is leaning forward to kiss you. What was interesting in that movie was when that mom did that to that little girl, there was no resistance. There was no shunning away from it. There was no pushing back. All that little girl did was receive that embrace. That's what we need to learn how to do, is to receive the embrace of our Father and the kisses from his holy and divine lips upon our foreheads, and accept how he feels. Accept and believe what he feels in his deepest of hearts toward you and me. And you will be surprised at the healing and the comfort and the assurance, the strength, the joy and the happiness that flows out of the context of living in the warmth and the reality of his divine embrace, even in the midst of our brokenness. You think about that and spend some time today beholding him who is looking down and beholding you and smiling.